Welcome to Inside the Founders Studio. We're a podcast dedicated to uncovering the grit that make founders, entrepreneurs, and innovative thinkers tick in one of the most crucial industries on the planet, supply chain. To learn more, you can check us out at InsideTheFoundersStudio.com. But for now, let's hand it to our host, Ryan Schreiber.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Inside the Founders Studio. I'm Ryan Schreiber. Today's guest, when I started thinking about this podcast, there were three people that immediately I said, I have to have these folks on. And Ted Alling, our guest today, was one of them that first came to mind. So I'm really excited to have you here. Ted, you're a founder, a board member, an investor, a leader, and educator. I personally think that maybe Chattanooga Prep is the coolest thing that you're doing. It kind of depends on how you know Ted, or how you came across Ted to know what he's famous for. So thanks for joining me, Ted. Just given everything that you're in, why don't for anybody who doesn't know you, maybe do your own introduction, because I want to hear how you would do it.
Wow, that's interesting. So I am a dad of three kids. I've got a wonderful wife. We are having our 20th wedding anniversary next month.
Oh, congratulations.
Which is really, really something I hold dear to my heart, trying to be a good husband. I've got a 16-year-old daughter, 14-year-old son, and 10-year-old son. And, I feel really lucky being a dad. So I grew up in Birmingham. I had a really all-star dad growing up. My dad's 72, and an incredible mom. My mom is about to be 70, and they're based in Birmingham. My dad is an oral surgeon, and my mom is a nurse. And I've got two younger brothers. One just moved from LA to Nashville. He owns a tech recruiting firm called Marius Group. He's doing he actually does a lot of logistics as well. Then I got a younger brother in Birmingham that's a medical salesperson for Stryker. But anyway, grew up in a town called Vestavia Hills. It's outside of Birmingham. Learned a lot of good lessons there. I think one thing I kind of tend to really lean back on a lot is just I kind of hit the lottery growing up with my parents. And the older I get, the more I realize just how, being born on third base, I really was. And so really great parents that worked really hard and gave me all the opportunities I could have in life. And so I'm really grateful for that, for what they gave to me. But I think that the lessons I really learned from my parents, one, my dad, every night he calls his patients. He's an oral surgeon, so he pulls wisdom teeth. And, I never forget, I can see him right now in his front room calling each patient. And if he knew who they were, he would literally drive to their house and go check on them. And so I think I just grew up thinking that was normal. I don't know how many doctors you have call you after your visits. Probably not many, or even show up at your house. And so it just really was for me a lesson of just caring more about things. And so I was a real kind of mediocre student, really below average athlete. I played football and wrestled. I played football for one of the best all-time. He's actually the most all-time winningest coach in Alabama history. And
Bear Bryant.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah. Basically, he basically is the Bear Bryant. But I think I learned a lot. It was interesting. I was at a Chat Prep basketball game the other day, and I saw a kid that I really like kind of riding the pine, and I really identified with that. I spent a lot of time cheering on my teammates. I was a lineman, left guard, and was never really the star of the team, but I really embraced the team effort. And how many linemen can you name in the NFL? Barely any, right? And that job is just so important. That I think it was just a really good learning piece of my journey that I learned a lot from. So
I had the advisor for my last business. He won. It's I think one of the best compliments I've ever received. He said that I care. Like you were talking about your dad. He's like Ryan, you care, and you underestimate you underestimate how much caring is a superpower and how so many people like, right. They care enough. They care to a level, but like, they're not, their heart and soul isn't in it. Like your dad, and it sounds like, you talking about cheering on your team, you're like that glue, they call it the glue guys on the rosters.
Oh yeah.
Right. They're not the starters. They're not even the backups usually. Right. But they're the glue guys. They're the guys that work extra hard in practice or, are really there to cheer their teammates up. They're the first ones on the field to say, pat the kicker on the helmet when he misses a big one. Like, hey man, no big deal. Go get the next one. So I think that's super interesting.
Yeah.
You played sport. You played a couple of sports. So we're diving right into how you grew up and stuff. And I guess we'll come back to the growing up part or the career part. Any other like sports? Did you have any other hobbies? You said you weren't a very good student. What'd you do with your time?
It was real interesting. I think I always liked making money. I worked at a gas station and in high school, and I really liked it. And it's really interesting. I was thinking about coming on here, and it's funny. I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff like that. But my dad had back then some Tony Robbins tapes. You remember he used to sell them online or whatever. Yeah. And I would sit in that gas station at night and listen to a lot of those tapes. And I really think a lot of that shaped who I was, kind of this self-improvement type mindset. Because, I was very just okay in school. Like literally I graduated like dead middle of my class. And I think I got into business and like even working the gas station, which was, which I really liked. I liked, I took a weird pride in having like the cleanest bathrooms. And
what did you like about it? Like, what do you have a sense of what?
I just liked the feeling of people saying like, man, I come in here because the bathrooms are clean and I get good service, and it was just a lot of that is inherently, I'm a positive person. I get a lot of that from my parents. And, so yeah, I just got a lot of good feedback on trying to like give really great service. And so that just kind of like who I kind of was. And I had a really, a big motor to work hard. So went to through high school, went to college at Samford. I sometimes say it quick so people think Stanford, but it's Samford. It's a great school in Birmingham. I encourage a lot of people to go there. Was really involved in my fraternity, and that's where I met my two co-founders at Access America. And so we really took our fraternity way too serious. Like one of my partners would just skip class because he was like scheming on whatever we were working on at the time.
I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to be saying this.
But, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, we're going off script here.
No, I don't mind. I don't know if it was Barry or not, but I don't know that they appreciate it. But
and so and I tell this story a lot, but like our junior year in college, and this was like 99. This is like before the Social Network, when like Mark Zuckerberg came out, that movie, and like, tech startup and Y Combinator, Techstars. Yeah. And so I think we just wanted to start a business together. And at the time, we talked about Smoothie King was a franchise that kind of was hot in Birmingham. And we ended up, we thought that Chattanooga would be the perfect place because they were both from Chattanooga. And I was just kind of ready to get out of Birmingham. And so we looked into that, and then we just decided not to. In fact, I met my wife my senior year. We were RAs, resident assistants, and we met, and she was like, this is probably not a good idea. And thankfully she probably said that. And so then right out of school, I took a job with C.H. Robinson. And
all right, wait, slow down. We'll get there. We'll get into the career part in a minute. That's cool. Smoothie. I love Smoothie King, by the way. I mean, it was big that's right around when I was a senior in high school. And so I remember that time, and Smoothie Kings were like blowing up in Tampa too. So I don't know that I ever thought of starting.
Do you remember the go-to? What'd you drink? Do you remember that?
I mean, back then, now they've gotten really complicated. I mean, back then, I think it was just like strawberry banana
Probably.
or something like that. Now you got to pick. I hadn't been, living in Chicago for 12 years. Like, I never saw a Smoothie King. Then I went down to Fayetteville to meet with Hunt, and there was one there. I got real excited. So I went into the Smoothie King, first Smoothie King in probably 15 years. And they were asking me 75 questions about mix-ins and this kind of stuff. And I was like, can I just get like a regular strawberry banana and like just go on with my life? That wasn't really an option anymore. But what was yours? Do you remember?
I love the Immune Builder. That was the one I liked. And now my son, my 14-year-old, loves it. And he likes the banana. So,
that's that Smoothie King and Pita Pit fall into the same. Did you guys have Pita Pit?
No, I remember the name though.
So when I got into college, Pita Pit, so I'm only a few years behind you, right? So I started college in 2002 and you graduated in 2000, right? So, it just blew up, right? Like that's when it was getting really huge. And anybody who's seen me on camera knows I'm fat or has met me in life. Yeah. And so I went on Atkins in college because that's when Atkins was real big. So I ate Pita Pit 2 meals a day for like 3 years. But and I would still eat it, by the way. Chicken Caesar salad is like my jam. But
hey, where'd you go to school?
I went to the University of South Florida in Tampa.
That's right. Okay.
And then I went to Michigan State. So that's the Michigan State connection. All right. So you were growing up outside of you said I didn't realize how much I was kind of born on third base until I got older. And I think that's a really interesting observation. I feel very, very similarly about my life. Not that this is about me, but the older I've gotten, but I think it's a common maxim, right? Like the older I get, the smarter my parents were. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. Were you the kind of person who was like never home, for exactly kind of that reason? Like I was always at somebody else's house. Like I didn't really spend my time at home. Was that you?
No, it's weird. And I was telling my kids this other day. My parents did a great job of finishing out our basement, had a pool table and ping pong table.
Oh, cool.
And so we were the house to crash at. And literally, I'm not making this up, my friends would come over and be like, hey, is your dad around? I want to see. I'm like, my dad's not cool. What are y'all talking about?
So I had the same thing. Yeah.
And I'm like, y'all are serious? You want to hang out with my dad? But he's the type guy. He did we would go to out in the country and watch backyard racing. And he was actually a cut man for a while for a boxer. Okay. And so we would load up in my mom's van and go watch this guy named the Road Warrior get his face punched in. And my dad's working on him in the corner. But that was I've got to do more of that with my own kids. Cause that was just experiences that you'll never forget.
Yeah, I've been this year, not to make this about me again, but year, being from Tampa, right? This year's been a great sports year for Tampa, but it's also been very wistful, right? Because when we went, when the Bucks won the Super Bowl in 2003, I was there with my dad. When the Lightning won the Stanley Cup in 2004, I was there with my dad, and now I'm in. Now I'm in Texas. My dad's still in Florida. Luckily, my parents are still alive and still, doing okay. But, there was this wistfulness of at the time I was young enough where I didn't appreciate that experience, right? And now it's God, I would do, I wish we could be there together and share that. I went to the Rose Bowl with my grandfather. This will stay with me forever. A big Miami Hurricanes fan. My grandfather went to the University of Miami. And, when they played Nebraska in the Rose Bowl in 2002, I went with my grandfather, who's passed away now. He passed away a few years ago. And somebody asked us if we wanted to take a picture together. And he kind of looked at me and I was like, oh, it's okay. Because I didn't want to burden the person. I'll never have that picture now. We got the experience. I'll have the memories. It was an incredible, trip. But anyway, so I know what you mean in terms of of wanting to, looking back on that and not necessarily having that appreciation. Other than you said, well, my dad's not really that cool. Did you look up to anybody when you were a kid? I mean, was there maybe not, it doesn't have to be family, but you had this internal drive. I've heard you say you liked to care and you liked to be recognized for caring, which I think is interesting. Mm-hmm. Did that, was there somebody you really wanted to, if they came in and patted you on the back and said, Ted, great job. You feel like you made it?
Yeah, one would be that football coach I mentioned. And I could quote, I think about his name was Buddy Anderson, but we had these buddyisms. And he would just say things that stuck with me forever. If you lay down with dogs, you're going to get fleas. So just really making sure you surround yourself with, 9s or 10s. So that kind of stuck with me. No, not really. I do remember once, this is weird. I just remember this, like going to one of my dad's friends who had this really neat lake house and a nice big house. And I was like, wow, this is like cool. I would love to have a house like this one day on a lake. And he said, Rock, people used to make fun of me for working on Saturdays. And so weirdly, I remember that from middle school. It's like, okay, gotcha, check. You want something like that? You got to work harder than everyone else and do things and be uncommon. And so I think
do what other people won't right. Do what other people won't.
And so, but there wasn't there's not like, oh, this guy, my parents, we had money, but I didn't really even know it. I mean, we lived in a very, just kind of average middle class house and didn't do anything too, extravagant growing up. So both my parents from Indiana, just, very Army families. So very just kind of service minded folks.
What about now? I mean, like, are there you've I mean, like, by so many measures, Ted, you've made it. I'm sure you have the lake house now. I mean, Access America, deal. I'm sure. Is there somebody you're trying to improve? But you're still working hard. Like, you're still out there. You're still making a difference. You do a ton for Chattanooga. Is there somebody that now you want to be? You want to say you want them to pat you on the back and say, Ted,
it'd be really weird people that are just kind of in my life that haven't really made it. I mean, everything I kind of do, I'm very big, and I talk a lot about this whole time, but the school my wife and I started, that's kind of our everything at this point. And just, I'm really having a lot of intentional conversations with a lot of my white friends that don't have a lot of diversity with their friend group. And so Kelly and I, my wife, are having these conversations with folks being like, hey, you can see how it might be harder kind of be African-American in America than white. And that leads to a lot of like deeper conversations about things. And, you don't want your zip code to kind of, I'm really big into school choice. I think if you're born, in certain zip codes, you just don't have the same opportunities. Like there's a lot of failing schools in certain places, and you've lived in Chicago, and if you're born in a certain part of Chicago, your chances of making out aren't very high. There's some schools here locally, and I don't know if you remember the ACT or not. But like the average ACT at some of these failing schools is like a 13. The average. So you have no shot. And I heard a stat, if you start in 9th grade at one of these schools, the chances that you graduate with a 4-year degree is 1/3 of 1%.
Wow.
If you start a school in 9th grade, 1 out of 300 kids is going to graduate from a 4-year university. So that just looked a lot different than my
experience.
Right.
So, it's kind of, that's interesting. It's almost that, you're really kind of what motivates you now is these kids coming back to you in a few years and saying, like,
1,000,000%. Oh, me and my wife said the day they come back and introduce us to their family and are talking about their job that they have, like, that's it.
And saying, I know I couldn't have done it without you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's who you're trying to impress. And like, it's that's interesting. So we'll get a little bit into your, starting to get a little bit into your career. You came out of school, you didn't start Smoothie King. So you were at Robinson. Looks like you were only Robinson for like 2 years.
Yeah, I was there.
Before you jumped into Access America.
Yeah, started in Birmingham, and then I got transferred to Nashville. Had a great experience there. I kind of quickly knew that I wasn't going to stay there, though. Just the corporate culture just wasn't what I was really looking for. In fact, and I told Jeff Silver this, when I was there, they acquired American Backhaulers. And I remember talking to those people on the phone. I'm like, whoa, something sounds different in their voice than the people that I was working with. Just more energy. And I will say I started one of the hardest things I've ever done. I started refrigerated LTL division. I mean, you talk about hard. That was the most insane. So we would go out and find local shippers in Nashville that were shipping a couple pallets of fish, pallets of chicken, plants, chocolate, and you get a local truck to go pick up all the little LTLs, bring it to a cold storage. And CH had bought a division in Minneapolis. I can't remember what they're called, but they would help you build the loads. And then I'd have to book the trucks, like from Nashville to Phoenix, and it'd have stops in Mississippi and Louisiana, Texas. And then I have to make the appointments with McLean's and, Walmart or whatever. And it was like, you'd have like a load with like 9 drops, but you had like 40 grand, like not that much, 30 grand in revenue on the truck. But the truck would take a week to deliver it.
Right.
You'd have claims anyway. And I kind of did that. That was that helped give me confidence though, being like, damn, I kind of made up a lot of this stuff and it worked out pretty well. Like we got it going. It was a profit center for our branch. And so anyway, no, I think I'm so thankful for C.H. Robinson for giving me that opportunity. And man, they just continue to grow and, and that stock has done well for a long time. So yeah,
not for me, but like when I seem to buy it, it goes down. But that's not the point. Maybe they just know that I'm buying it. But so before Access, you talked a lot about like a lot of hard work, a lot of kind of like, grinding it out. You were never the top of anything, really, I suppose, except for cleaning the bathrooms. But you had this. Right. You were a lot of a role player, but you took pride in that. It sounded like, right. And everything kind of you did in your friend group, though, it sounds like you were kind of the leader, but did you have before Access? I mean, did you have anything that sticks with you that was like, did you ever been fired? Any big failures that kind of stick with you that when you look back at that time that you learned from, or was it kind of smooth sailing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it was pretty smooth sailing looking back.
All right, cool.
Nothing like really stuck out.
You didn't have that Michael Jordan moment like I got cut from the high school basketball team?
Listen, I was just like a normal dude. I wasn't like, like
some girl you really liked that shot you down? Nothing?
Oh, yeah, tons of girls. Oh, my God.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. All right,
Mega girls there for a long time. Yeah, trust me.
All right, we'll move on from that then.
Stomped on and thrown out the window for sure.
So you had 2 co-founders at Access, Barry and who was your other? And Alan. Right? Mm-hmm. And you met them in college. Were they both at Robinson as well? Like, what did they do before Access?
Alan, he worked he was trying to start a movie theater in Birmingham after college, and he was kind of waiting tables. And Barry had moved home. His family owned a local brick distributor in Chattanooga. And he was kind of like helping run the books there. He was CFO, but like in college, he was reading the Wall Street Journal and just really big brain guy. Both of them are like, I could patent being the dumbest person in the room, honestly. Like,
isn't that always what you want, though? Personally, that's what I want.
Like, literally, and I'm okay with it. I'm fine to be the dumbest person in the room. But Barry is very smart financially. He makes just incredible decisions. Him and I talk a lot. If I didn't have him, I'd be like in a gutter, probably outside, like trying to make it. And he was like, I would be managing a very nice, small amount of money, like a nice little pile. And so the two of us worked really well. Alan is he's more computer programmer-ish, future. I mean, he got big into Singularity. If you're familiar with that, Ray Kurzweil. He went out and did that executive program. He's always thinking about next trends and forward-thinking crazy stuff. And he really understood technology. And so that was, the three of us had and he's very process operations oriented. So the three of us made a really neat team. We had the 3 stool legs to make a good,
So the quote, one fraternity brother who was, quote, way too into it, it was you.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. You kind of just tattled on yourself there.
Yeah.
So they were in these other industries. What made y'all say in 2004, 2 years into your career, presumably pretty early in their careers, those other things as well, that access was the thing to do?
I was still doing the refrigerated thing and at CH, and I came to Chattanooga on some sales calls, and there was a local fish company here, and then me and Barry grabbed lunch, and I just started, because we were just buds, and kind of told him what I was doing, and he was like, hey, we got all these brick loads coming into our plant here, and I'm like, well, I've never done flatbed, and he's just like, well, let me talk to my dad. So his dad seed funded us, and my wife and I just had built a house in Nashville. And I came home, and I look back to, because I know a lot of folks, I coach a lot of folks and talk to folks. I was lucky. My father-in-law is also an entrepreneur, because a lot of spouses can be not supportive and be like, no, we're not taking that risk. We just bought a house. You can't do this, And so my wife had grown up with a dad that had taken risks. And so, man, that was like huge. So her and I said, honey, this is an opportunity that, we got to do. We're young and we have nothing to lose. We don't have any kids yet. And, so we moved to Chattanooga. We sold our house and made it happen. And Barry's dad gave us a tiny little room. And, I set really big goals for the company early. I don't know. It was like, no way this thing is failing. We've got to I got to support my wife and my best friend, and so it just started in a really small room. And but the first thing I really and I remember even thinking this and saying it, but I said, I want to be the best place in America to work, and I really meant it. I saw some people talk to drivers at CH and just the people there that just didn't have the full effort that I thought I was putting in. And, and there's some great people there. I'm not to bash them or anything. They were great friends and people still working there that are doing awesome. But, and so anyway, we just wanted to care more and give a white glove service. And I literally told Barry, I was like, Barry, I want to be $100 million company. Literally said that. And he was like, okay, psychopath, let's see what you can do.
Let's just get this load of bricks out of here first.
Yeah. I was like, using me, they kind of talked to me into probably being their logistics coordinator.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wait a minute. So anyway, it was, it was a great story. And my wife and I on the weekends, we literally would go to truck stops and knock on doors and hand out cards, literally. Passing out cards. Hey man, this truck looks awesome. Where are you headed? Oh, cool. Call me for a backhaul. That type stuff. I can remember some of my first carriers I dealt with, I freaking met out at truck stops. And so it was very, it's not very scalable, but we hired a lot of really neat people early on. I had a friend, named Rob Farber who came on, and the day kind of Chad Eichelberger showed up, the game changed. And then we recruited Steve Cox, he ran our Minneapolis office, and in 5 years he grew it from 2 people to 170 and 200 million in sales. So it was a wild ride. I could talk about that a lot, but it was really fun.
So back in that room, you and Barry, you said failure kind of wasn't an option. Mm-hmm. You had these big goals. But how, you said, I want to be a $100 million company. So would 50 million have been a failure? If you'd only ever gotten to 50, that's a good living, right? You're probably clearing 2.5 million to the, you're taking home $1 million. He's taking home $1 million. You have 500,000 to invest back in the business. Would that have been failure?
I think at some point, I told some chat prep kids this yesterday, you've got to just set goals so big that it makes other people laugh. And I heard that somewhere, and maybe Grant Cardone or someone. And so we just set really bold, audacious goals. And I really believe it. I'm a bit delusional that we can hit those things. I didn't think about it that deeply, I guess. And so we just kind of throw out something really major that kind of, I think a CEO kind of has 3 things they're supposed to do. First, CEOs are supposed to set the vision and mission of the company. Like, this is who we are. Really understand your values and what the values and values. Culture is just the values of the people represented at a company. Okay, and so first the CEO says, "This is who we are." They got to know really deeply who they are. And a lot of the best startups I see really work on that. And I do a lot of early stage investing. And I love when people are really thoughtful about setting up culture, even before like booking their first sale. They kind of know who they are and who the type of people they want to recruit. It's just, I really think those are the special companies. Great companies have soul. Like you can feel it. And you see it when you go to certain businesses, like, obviously Chick-fil-A's and Costco's, and you kind of feel that from different people. But the CEO is supposed to set the vision and mission for the company. Second, that's number one. Number two, you hire the most ambitious, hardest working, loyal, just passionate people you can find. So you have to find 9s and 10s, like when you're starting a business. And so you set the vision, here's who we are, hire these freaking awesome people, and third, keep them happy. And so I just find myself a lot now. I have to try to manage a lot of relationships. I'm on a lot of boards, and I'm making sure we have great leadership there. And then I'm just, you good? You good? Are we good? All right, are we good? Just kind of making sure people are kind of staying happy with their situation, and you got aligned incentives and that sort of thing. And so that's a lot of what me and Barry and Alan do right now is trying to make sure we find some great leaders and give them the tools to be successful.
So, take me to maybe it didn't necessarily have to be early days, but sometime during Access America where you guys had something come up where you were just plain lucky. And whether it was like going to sink the ship and you got out of it somehow, you were just plain lucky, or, you mentioned Chad coming along and changing the game, right? Like Chad is an incredible person, leader. Like, he's unbelievable to anybody who doesn't know Chad Eichelberger at Reliance. Look him up. He's just amazing. But what's a time when you guys best laid plans of mice and men, and you were just plain lucky and you were able to keep going?
Oh yeah, there's tons, Ryan. Like, you have somebody find you through SEO, like a huge client found us through SEO, like search engine optimization stuff. I'm like, holy crap, that was too big. We lucked into getting some business with Komatsu locally. And we ended up, I was pitching them one thing, and they were like, at the time, they wanted to, we had an idea. We kind of collaborated, had an idea. They were making locally these excavators in Chattanooga, these huge excavators. And they wanted to ship them. They had to ship some to Asia. And to truck one from Chattanooga to Seattle, where the port was, it was like, it's oversized loads of $25,000, right?
Yeah, right.
We figured out on a flat car, you could put 2 of these on BNSF, rail it out there. It took 2 weeks. First you had to get a local guy, put it on. We found a rigger that would rig them on 80-foot flat cars. You could literally rail one 80-foot car, and we put 2 excavators on there for like $12,000. Okay. And so, like, imagine that cost savings.
That's a big difference.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a big difference, right?
12, that's a what? 50K for 2 of them to go over the road and $12K for 2 of them to go on the rail. Right. That's what, 38,000?
It was funny that I remember through St. Louis, a lot of them would get banged up, like people throw rocks through them or graffiti them sometimes. But anyway, that getting
hopefully nobody from St. Louis will be listening to this podcast.
Right. Well, that's what
like,
the rail
talking shit about. Yeah.
That's what the rail people told me. I'll never forget that. So anyway, we got Komatsu, led to us getting in Caterpillar, which I'm sitting in there with Chad and Steve. We still talk about this. We were in there with like 8 of their executives, and it felt like just they were shooting machine guns at us. And, we were a tiny company at that time, and they knew. I think they actually accessed our financials. They knew we were small, but we sold so hard, and we got in I can't remember the number. Chad and Steve would remember, but they was like, yeah, first year we want to give y'all like 12 million in business. We're like, oh my gosh. We're like a $20 million company or something at the time. But it was just like, yeah, it was, we shouldn't have been in there. I mean, we're the type of people you jump in, over your head and swim like hell. And so that's kind of what we've been able to do a lot, is just get some of these big accounts and work our tails off and try to, make it happen. So
being an investor, my reflection is being an investor is kind of a lot like being a baseball player, right? Because like if you strike out fewer than 7 times out of every 10 plate appearances, like you're going to be a Hall of Fame investor, or you're going to be a Hall of Fame baseball player. I'm super curious, like being an investor and being a board member and having the relationships you have with companies now, do you think about success and failure differently? Like, what does failure mean to you now as an investor versus, your first days at Access America, where you said, hey, failure is not an option? I'd imagine that's not how you think about it now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely different. I mean, and if I have my Dynamo hat on, for me, and the 4 partners have different ways we look at things. I feel like you got to have 3 things for me. You got to have a charismatic CEO. It's got to be somebody that really can sell, because you got to be able to sell to get employees. Mm-hmm. You got to get customers, and you got to raise money. So you got to have somebody that's got that quality to get people to trust and take chances on. So that's the first thing. Second, in the way like the fund world works, I mean, you have to be able to this has got to be a huge business. We can't invest in lifestyle stuff because our LPs will get mad at us. So we've got to shoot for, it's got to be $100 million plus business. Mm-hmm. Right. And third, for me, it's can our Dynamo team bring value? I don't want to invest in stuff that none of the 4 of us can't help out with at all. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That doesn't make sense. But it's also I think that middle bucket is huge. It's got to be a huge industry problem or opportunity.
And that probably makes failure more likely, right?
Sure, right. And then sometimes we're it's got to be crazy that we've seen some ideas. We're man, this is wild. No one's ever done this, and we should probably place some bets on that stuff that doesn't really make sense a lot of times.
Maybe one of the placards I can see behind you would be a good example of that. But that's showing up right there. That's certainly an interesting take. Is take some swings that don't make sense, and you're sort of more in a position to do that. Do you counsel founders on how to think about failure?
I do a lot of more founder dynamic stuff. And that's a whole nother topic of trying to have them not kill each other most of the time. Just counseling. I mean, it's just a lot of stress and pressure. I mean, it is you've put everything on the line, and there's just a lot of founder dynamics that are tough. And so you got to have a lot of trust with each other, and it's a stressful deal, and depression is real. And, it doesn't make sense for you to want to go do something like that. It's very sexy and glamorous to be a founder and be on TechCrunch and raise that money. And then you're laying up wide-eyed at 2 a.m. thinking holy crap, I've got payroll and we don't have any customers and my tech's not built and I'm going to kill my co-founder because they're not working hard as me. So we do a lot of just checking in and trying to help them through that.
You talked earlier when you were talking about Chattanooga Prep, which for those who don't know, Chattanooga Prep is an all boys school there in Chattanooga, primarily focused on inner city, right? And giving inner city kids an opportunity to learn and to kind of, as you said, get out of those failing maybe school environments. You mentioned that a lot of what you through your experience with that, it lends itself to a lot of conversations around privilege. You didn't use the word privilege, but privilege. And so, my observation a lot of times, one of the goals of this podcast is to kind of demystify success and failure and help folks feel comfortable with, imposter syndrome so that they'll take some chances and they'll do some things. And so one of my observations is that, folks hold themselves back because they look at successful people like you or like Kevin Nolan, who was one of my interviews already. And they say, well, it was easy for Ted because he had all of these tailwinds, right? Mm-hmm. He had all these tailwinds that made him destined to be successful. Mm. Of course he was. Like, right? Mm-hmm. You and your brothers are the you're the Emanuels, like Ari Emanuel and Rahm Emanuel of the of Birmingham. Mm-hmm. And so, but that's probably not true. Like, you probably had some headwinds, right? And maybe you didn't have the types of headwinds that you were born on third base, but you still had to get home, right? Mm-hmm. And so you weren't standing in the batter's box like maybe some of the kids who go to Chattanooga Prep. So I set all of that up to say, did you have headwinds that you had to come through?
Yeah.
Maybe what were those? And how did you kind of rationalize that to yourself and really push through?
Yeah, I think, it's interesting. I listen to a lot of podcasts like Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan and stuff like that. And if you start listening to those guests that he has on there, most of them don't have scenarios like I did. Mm-hmm. Most came from nothing and struggle. Like I think a lot, and I think even like my own kids and a lot of your listeners' kids are like, you kind of have to almost manufacture struggle now. And because you got to go through adversity and you got to learn how to work hard and dream big, because it's easy, with these computers and phones and distractions. I think kids today, and I'm the biggest phone addict, like I'm so addicted to my phone, it's insane. But it's like the amount of time that kids are getting on these things. And I'm sure you saw Social Dilemma. Did you see that Netflix? Oh,
no.
Man. Gosh, that's what you're going to do tonight. It's just the algorithms and what all of these social media companies are doing to our brains is nuts, and how we're just lab rats, basically. Just want to get another hit, dopamine.
Totally. Yeah.
And so I don't know, man. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I was just I was lucky to surround myself. I had good discernment on making good decisions. And also, I think a lot of folks want to give me all the credit for stuff just because I'm the loudest person in the room. But like, I'm dead serious. Like, I could do nothing without my partners. Like, it's embarrassing. It is total imposter syndrome. Like, a lot of times I'm like, man, I shouldn't get all this credit. And I really worked hard. I tried. I think I did. You can ask Bear now. And I tried to, like, if someone give me an award, I'd be like, it's the three of us. Like, yeah. I don't want, these are my best friends. Like, they're doing as much shit as I'm doing and thinking through these things. And so I think about trying to, like, the greatest coaches, they take the fall when something messes up and they give the credit to the team. And so when something good happens. And so I try to live my life that way and don't always do the best job of it. And so it's funny, even like Chat Prep. Like, Chat Prep was essentially my wife's idea, but people try to give me all the credit for it. I'm like, she is the one that had the idea. I'm just a lot louder than she is.
Yeah.
But we're both in this thing together. So anyway.
That's certainly interesting. You mentioned imposter syndrome, and imposter syndrome is a big thing that I think needs more sort of like light shined on it. I've said before to anyone who's listened to this podcast or seen me other places that, like, I deal with it. And it might, to your point about being the loudest person in the room, I'm pretty freaking loud. And,
yeah, you are.
And people might be surprised, that I deal with that type of imposter syndrome, from time to time. How have you dealt with that? Like, how do you work through that when you're feeling it? How has it affected you?
it comes up a fair amount, especially being involved in this VC world. I don't have the brain power of a lot of these, Ivy League types that are gotten into they're in VC world. Just they can process information really quick, and they also and I've seen this on other boards that I'm on, where they seem to just over talk to and can sound smart as hell, and they are smart, but it's I'm I feel like I've gotten some wisdom and experience growing stuff, and they're saying stuff, and I'm like, yeah, you sound smart, but you're just talking to talk right now. So I see a lot of that stuff. And so I definitely feel something like, golly, should I even be on this board for this company? Man, I'm I'm definitely the dumbest person in this room. But I kind of feel like the tortoise and the hare thing. I'm just going to keep trying to learn and just stick with it for a long time. And once I kind of get the feeling of okay, they're full of crap. But they can make you kind of feel dumb sometimes.
I think that there's a thread through. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. I'm going to sum it up kind of is one of the threads that's carried through all the stuff you've talked about is you have strengths and you have weaknesses. And in every conversation you're in every scenario you're in every situation you're in, you understand, you have an appreciation for the fact that you're strong at certain things and you're weak at certain things. And when you're feeling imposter syndrome, you look at the people that are the in crowd where you're the imposter, and you just kind of picture them in their underwear in a manner of speaking, right? You're well, they also have the same thing going on, and so maybe right, maybe they're stronger than me in some areas, but they've just been investors. I've actually had to build these businesses. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. Is that kind of a good summation of what you're saying?
I feel you, and I definitely identify that. I'm glad you kind of clarified that there, because I feel quite a bit when you're feeling insecure about certain things. It's
picture them in their underwear.
There you go.
That's going to be a theme. Maybe I'll title this episode Ted, picture them in their underwear. Last question for you. We only have a couple minutes left. Okay. And thanks a ton for sharing it with me. The few times that you and I have been able to chop it up before, first of all, you've been incredible with your time with me, and you're just one of the things I think that it makes you special, and one of the reasons you were one of the 3 people I said I have to have on here, is just your willingness to give back and say yes. I cold emailed you a year ago and said, hey, Ted, I'm going to be in Chattanooga. I just would love to meet you. Mm-hmm. You spent an hour with me. We had coffee. You walked me around to Reliance and some of the other businesses. And what a just an incredible. So first of all, thank you. And I'd like to tell everyone else how grateful I am that you did that. But we've always liked to chop it up about the industry. I mean, you play in this field, you invest in this field. We have a good time chopping it up and talking about where things are going. It's a topic you really love. Where do you think things are headed right now in supply chain logistics, freight tech?
Yeah, I think, one feels like our economy is, I've talked to a lot of smart people that thinks it's kind of artificially inflated overall, just with the last year, everything that's happened. More of the stock market, I'd assume, is really kind of inflated. It feels like.
So buy Bitcoin is what you're saying?
Yeah. No, what's the new one? Dodge or whatever?
Dogecoin. Yeah. Me and Tim Dooner got me into it. Tim Dooner at Freightwaves got me into it. Yeah. So, I'm just doing it for Dooner, but okay. It's worked out so far. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So I think our economy is definitely kind of overinflated a bit. So I think there's going to be some pullback probably with the large stocks. I'm very bullish on our industry. I'm seeing a lot of. Here's what I see. I see a lot of corporates, logistics corporates, underinvesting in their own IT infrastructure stuff. And so a corporate, a publicly traded company, I have 40 projects, okay, for their staff. They're small programming staff. And what we see at Dynamo is like number 17 and 34 and 26. Those are all like big businesses that other big publicly traded companies have problems with. And some of these maybe trucking companies or supply chain companies, they're not getting the best and brightest Stanford, Georgia Tech,
totally,
whatever engineers to go work there. Like they're like, you're graduate, it's maybe a long shot to go get that great talent if you're a trucking company. And they're not excited to go do that. But what we're seeing is like some of these issues, we're like, wait, if that warehouse company and that trucking company all have that same number 18,
sure, yep,
you can get good talent will join a startup to take on an unsexy problem.
Right.
And so, again, I think freight tech continues to be hot. I think every company today has to be a tech company. And so
you saw that with US Express's like earnings call.
Right.
I mean, how much were they? Cameron Ramsdale and I have been chatting a bunch. I really like him. I personally am very bullish on Variant. Again, not that this is about me, but I'm very bullish on what he's working on. But if you listen to their earnings call a year ago at the Stifel conference, and I wrote an op-ed about this a year ago at the Stifel conference. Eric Fuller standing up there saying trucks are how we're going to win. We're going to add trucks. We're always going to add trucks. Whatever. And a year later, they're telling the tech story. Right. Yeah. They're telling the story about how they're a tech company now, not a trucking company. So that lands perfectly with what you're saying.
Yeah. And so, we continue to be bullish at our fund on what we're doing. And I'll tell you, I mean, it's just like, and these tech companies now, just the world has changed since the pandemic. I mean, people are hiring people anywhere and building startups with like, talked to a guy yesterday. He was in Sweden and his tech team's in Egypt, and talked to another guy in Nashville who's he's doing some outsourcing to I think it was Turkey. And so like the world has just got distributed, and you don't have to be in San Francisco and the brain drain cities of New York and Chicago and Boston. And so people are like, I'll hire a CTO in Topeka, Kansas now.
Wherever the best talent is now, it like you remove those frictions and those barriers. Yeah.
So I think, and like even the deal flow we're seeing, I'm like, golly, this is tough. I mean, we're seeing just like some ridiculous companies, and I think the pandemic has just given everybody's just kind of like looked in the mirror and been like, okay, screw it, I'm going to go for it now. Like life's too short not to try to bet on myself.
Yeah.
And so
my wife and I were talking about that last night. Totally agree.
Really? So anyway, it's kind of some brief thoughts, but
that's great. Well, Ted, thanks for jumping on with me. I really appreciate it. This was a ton of fun, and I certainly look forward to listening to this back. This, I think, was just another incredible conversation. And until next time, man. I appreciate it.
Good to see you. Thanks for everything you're doing.
Take care. Bye. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Inside the Founder Studio. A couple quick things before you go. We're proudly hosted on the Logistics of Logistics Network. To hear more content from the industry's top leaders in supply chain and logistics, check out thelogisticsoflogistics.com. And until next time, onward and upward.